The chief priests and the priests in general, and the Pharisees in particular, they had a very strong hold on religion and culture. And sometimes it's difficult to make any distinction between religion and culture, as very often religion is a cloak of culture. They were the guardians of both, of culture through religion. Jesus turns up, and Jesus begins to challenge both culture and religion as the Pharisees presented it. Yet strangely, both Jesus and the Pharisees seem to have shared a similar theology in many respects. I suppose one may argue that the Pharisees were the evangelicals of the day. And yet very often they came into that space of clash with Jesus. So much so that they rejected Jesus. They called him a liar. They called him a demon or having to do with practicing witchcraft and so on. They said he couldn't be any of the things that he seemed to be claiming. And as they said some hard things about Jesus, Jesus said some hard things to them as well. He called them whitewashed sepulchres. He said that they were hypocrites. He said that anybody who was a convert as a consequence of their evangelism became twice as son of hell as they were. So there was this tension between them. Jesus says to them, if you look in the Word, you would see me because the words speak of me. So there was this ongoing tension between Jesus and the priests, the Pharisees. Never seemed to have been resolved in the life of Jesus. They were the ones who seemed to have been the guardians, as it were. Jesus died. Not much changed. And yet, we come over, for instance, to Acts chapter 6, where it says there that the word began to spread rapidly. And many persons were coming to faith. And then it says, and many priests came to faith. And one is forced to just to stop to wonder, how is it that here now, after resurrection, with a preaching of the word, Pharisees, priests, those who were guardians of the culture, those who were guardians of the religion, unmovably it would seem, are now giving up the culture, giving up the religion to embrace this new frame of reference. What was accountable, or what could be the cause of this? Sometimes we ourselves find ourselves in a similar space, where when confronted with truth in the moment, it's difficult to break out of culture. It's difficult to break away from religion. It's difficult to break away from traditionalism, to embrace truth, to embrace the will of God. Because very often we're blocked by our culture. Very often we're blocked by traditionalism. Very often we are blocked by a worldview that is religious without being spiritually focused on God's will. How do we make the difference? It must have been very difficult for these Pharisees who at one point, priests who were at one point fighting Jesus, but now opposed to their very own former way of life. Must have been tough. Sometimes we have to go through a process. We have to be in the rough place. We have to be in the place almost as though we were antagonists before we come into the place that God wants us. So let's give the Pharisees a chance. who knows, we might yet be saved.